In other news, Israel's military says that Palestinian gunmen shot and killed 4 Israelis and wounded several others near a Jewish settlement in the West Bank on Tuesday. The assailants were later themselves shot to death. The killings followed a major Israeli raid in a Palestinian refugee camp on Monday in which 6 Palestinians were killed. Fears are growing that the violence will spiral further.
Bodies lying covered. A gas station turned into a crime scene. 2 Palestinians are suspected of carrying out the deadly shooting near the Israeli settlement of Eli. Israel's national security minister called for a dramatic escalation of tactics.
The time has come for a military operation in the West Bank, to return to the targeted assassinations from the sky, demolish buildings, put up barriers, expel terrorists, and pass the death penalty law for terrorists.
A manhunt followed the attack. One of the suspects was reportedly shot to death after hailing this taxi, trying to flee. The driver was also injured. The suspect's body was paraded through the streets by an emotional crowd. The Palestinian militant group Hamas claimed the attack was a response to an Israeli military raid on Monday in the West Bank city of Jenin, which led to clashes, killing 6 Palestinians. The U.S. ambassador to Israel said he was deeply concerned about the deaths on both sides of the conflict.
So strong words there from Israel's Minister for National Security. DW correspondent Rebecca Ritters gave us this update from Jerusalem.
Yes, well, the far-right security minister, Itamar Ben-Gvir, is known for that kind of rhetoric. He's known for his tough stance and his support of settlers. He himself is a settler. He said that settlers were merely sitting ducks and something had to be done. Now, those calls follow calls from the finance minister, also a settler, Bezalel Smotrich, the day before, after that Israeli raid in the northern West Bank that you briefly mentioned in your lead-in there. Now, that didn't quite go to plan. We saw pushback from the Palestinians. It got very violent, and according to the Israeli military, saw a massive gun battle and even Israeli soldiers injured. So after that attack, Bezalel Smotrich had already been calling for a wider response, a military response in the West Bank, and we're hearing more and more from members of the far right. Now, Benjamin Netanyahu obviously the Prime Minister came out and condemned the attacks. He held a security assessment with his top defence and security officials that ran late into the night. There has been no real comment or official word out of that meeting. There definitely will be some kind of response, but it is unlikely that we'll see the kind of military operation that Itamar Ben-Gvir is calling for in that report.
And we hear there's been more developments overnight. What has happened since?
Yeah, Sarah, overnight we've seen an uptick in settler violence, these sort of revenge attacks, if you will, in various towns and cities across the occupied West Bank, targeting Palestinians and property. We've heard of dozens of people being injured, some from military tear gas, but also dozens of cars have been torched, and we've seen quite dramatic pictures of fires raging, scenes that are a little bit reminiscent of another rampage we saw following another Palestinian attack in February in the town of Hawara, and that was considered at the time, it was a massive rampage. That's what people were calling it. They were in fact calling it a pogrom. Hundreds of settlers organising themselves online to rampage through that city. Lots of injuries and lots of damage to property there. So definitely an uptick in violence. Not sure exactly what the response from Israel will be, and if indeed then there'll be a further response. But this comes in one of the deadliest years we've seen in this conflict in recent decades. Last year was considered one of the deadliest in more than 10 years, and this year is tracking to far surpass that if the numbers that we're seeing so far are anything to go by. So definitely an uptick in violence in the region, and what they call a cycle of violence doesn't seem to be slowing down.